I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Welcome to the Star Trek Picard After Show, Episode 8, Broken Pieces, and our panel remains broken into so many little pieces because Flobito may generate new content every week, but he sure isn't here every week. But we're here to talk about Episode 8, Broken Pieces. I'm Christian Bladt, joined by Nikki Bailey.
Hey.
The triumphant return. It's just really. So weird the way that the music stopped as soon as that said.
We all know it's not.
Because the music was like, not really. But by the great Frank Moran.
Great is very, very overused.
Fake news. But also sitting in again this week, the lovely Rachel Goodman.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited, especially because this episode reminded me of The Enemy Within, which is an original series Star Trek episode, and I can't wait to talk about that too.
Yes, so there is much to talk about, and we will go sort of overall thoughts. I do want to start with Frank because clearly I'm very sexist. I'm going to skip both of the women. No, Frank, it's because you weren't here last week, and you had a big problem with last week's episode, right?
I did.
Yeah, and I wanted to start with that. We'll mostly talk about this week's, but I thought that bore mentioning.
It was just the lack of. I guess the writers kind of looking back on the past of Picard. I mean, I know they've watched The Next Generation, of course. But,
I mean, you hope.
Yes, you would hope.
You sure hope.
But with the Inner Light, where I sent everybody in the DMs, I slid into everybody's DMs with that a little bit about them really hammering the point home that Picard had a rich life in the Inner Light episode, and so he had raised a family, he'd raised children, he'd been with grandchildren, and so he
played the heck out of that flute.
That's true.
Yeah.
He jammed out on that, and it was absolutely real to him.
Yeah.
So to him to feel like he doesn't understand children seemed false to me.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point.
Yes.
There, and I know from back in the old days when we used to do Star Trek weekly, that was one of your favorite episodes. And,
yes.
To disrespect that episode is to disrespect Frank Moran.
Yeah, the line is long for that.
But did they make it up to you this week for episode 8?
No, it was fine.
Uh-oh.
I mean, this is too long. 10 episodes is too long for this story.
But here's the problem. They started so slow that they needed 10 episodes because where we were after episode 4 was like, oh, that's 2 episodes worth. So they wasted 2 episodes. So we need these next 2 weeks, I think, to tidy up the story because they took too long. What do you think, Rachel?
So I'm going to agree with both of you guys and also add the fact that I feel the pilot really ramped us up and had me, I was like, what is this? This might be my next favorite Star Trek show. And then we got to episode 2 and I felt like the balloon just deflated and I was like, what?
Yeah, that's also known as the Voyager effect.
Yeah.
Basically episodes 2 through 100, you're like, what?
Yeah.
What happened? The pilot was good.
I'm gonna disagree on the Voyager situation.
Of course you are.
But I will say that I absolutely agree that it was sort of anticlimactic, and then it was like, well, this is not what we were promised, and we wanted the warm, fuzzy nostalgia and like greeting our old friend and spending time and falling in love with the show.
I've been waiting for Data. I want him to come back. But maybe that's part of the reason I love the pilot so much.
Yeah.
But here's my thing is that I did enjoy this episode. I thought it was better than the episode before. I thought we got more of the Picard that we're used to. Not necessarily the same person because I feel like this is not... I mean, granted, he has grown. He's had things happen to him that we haven't been with him his entire journey to see what had happened. But I still feel like we're not getting the man that we once saw in all of the movies and The Next Generation, and some of him did start to shine through, like in his conversations with Soji, and when we saw him talking to Agnes. I felt like we started to see that again, but not quite.
So what you're saying is you want more Jean-Luc and less JL.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna agree with that. I felt like
you might.
Yeah, I felt like there were a couple of moments in this episode where I was like, "Oh, Star Trek! That's my Star Trek!
Yeah.
That's my Star Trek right there!"
And usually it was one of the moments where you heard the theme, that the Next Generation theme, sort of in the background.
Yeah.
Because they're like, huh? Look what we're doing!
The music.
Come on!
I did appreciate 7 of 9 and the nostalgic moments we got with her, though. Yeah. So that made up for a lot of it for me.
And overall thoughts, Nikki, there's a very specific moment we'll get to, but apart from that moment, what were your overall thoughts on the episode?
I was happy for the information. I felt like good, thank you. I'm gonna file some of this information away. Like, thanks, that's awesome. I feel a little like, how you gonna wait till episode 8 to give me information that I need to make the story interesting to me? And we only have 2 episodes left. What are you talking about? It's just, so it's like a little late, and I don't want to say too little too late, but it's late, and I'm a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what will make it up to me personally?
Data.
If Data happens to not be dead, I will be like, okay, everything else is forgiven. I get this now. Thank you.
I would be okay even if it wasn't Data. If somehow
if it's not Data, it's not lore, but it's another Brent Spiner android.
Yes, I would be okay with a Brent Spiner android.
I agree
of
with
any
you too.
kind. Yes,
I'm with you there.
What if Brent Spiner plays Brent Spiner in the episode? He's at a Star Trek convention.
I am also okay with that. I have taken pictures with him at Star Trek conventions, so yes, that's cool.
Maybe that's what's happening at Deep Space 12, is that there's actually a Star Trek
whole
convention
meet and greet kind of situation happening.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
I mean, you figure, we know that Soji, we know that they have done this before with her, where they had a Jana and where they had other versions of her. So presumably there should be another version of Data.
That was actually what I started to think. I think that's what they're setting us up for. And then also that'll explain why. Wait, how did Android's body type change so much?
And it's not the first time that we would have another version of Data that we would have to get to know. So I am completely on board with that if it happens.
Agreed.
Where's Data's head from the Mark Twain one? They found it, right? Like after it was like buried for like 200 years or something. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Right, time zero.
Yeah. But they found it and they dug it up, right?
Yes.
So it's not. All right.
I mean, it's some mausoleum somewhere, the basements of Starfleet Academy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That seems to be what they do with everything. All right. So those are some of the big picture things, and yeah, we do start off getting some very specific information, which is Agnes's, if only you could have seen what I saw. And we saw that it drove pretty much everybody crazy, except for a creepy Romulan sister. Is that character's name really Rizzo?
Narissa.
Because I read a summary and I'm like, well, she kind of is, though. I was like, I kind of like that somebody calls her that. Anyway, Narissa. All right.
Yeah.
So she's the only one who can handle it. And then somehow along the way, it gets, I guess, the same visuals are what was shared with Agnes. And I mean, considering how easily she throws up, I don't know how her head didn't explode. Maybe they just let her see like the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, like a portion.
Yeah,
because she didn't immediately want to blow.
It was like the
out.
edited for television version, so they took out a lot of the racist stuff.
I think that's exactly what happened. I think that O understood that her brain would only be able to process so much, so she probably showed her only like a tenth of what everybody else saw, because she showed her what she needed to see to do what O needed her to do.
I feel like though the context for that came after we needed it. When we saw that Agnes threw up, I was like, well, what did she say? Like, why is it so big? Like, I would have liked this information before. Like, stop building all these mysteries if you're sorry.
Well, it's all right. Hey, that's why we're here. No.
We're all a little stressed. But my thing is, like, you're building all these mysteries that are like what is it called, a red herring? Like, these are not. That's not the thing. Here's the thing. Why? Whatever. Sorry.
Well, we do get to see the character of Ramda again from the earlier episode, who Soji approached, and she realized that Soji was not the Destroyer of Worlds. That's an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. term. But what did they call it?
The
Destroyer. Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead.
I could not stop hearing, to me, as soon as a couple episodes ago when they were mentioning the Destroyer, I'm thinking Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. now. I can't
that's why
stop.
I brought it up. Yeah.
I'm like, she's not Quake.
She's just a different Destroyer. But, I'm like, I feel like that prophecy will be much like that one, and, everybody will be all right. So, they're reminding us of her very clearly. Like, hey, don't forget about that. So I guess we'll have to see how that pans out. Personally, I found the goings-on over on the Borg cube to be the most interesting things. Like you were saying, Nikki, a lot of the other stuff is almost like information, where if maybe between episodes they've been like, oh yeah, and we have this appendix that you should probably read all this stuff really fast because you're going to need to know it. It's almost like, yeah, you didn't need to show me. I didn't need the flashbacks and stuff, just to... But again, these episodes, these last 3 weeks have been like 56 minutes, so it's like, I guess that's where the extra minutes are going. Frank, how did you feel about the happenings on the Borg cube?
I watched by the end of the episode. I was like, all right, cool. So she became queen, and then it was really dangerous that she might want to give it up, but then she gave it up. But all the Borg are ejected, and then we're just cool. We're just chilling out in space now. So I'm like, all right.
I felt like she didn't actually reject it. It was the Borg who said that she needed to be let go.
It said that. Well, yeah. It stood to reason that as Borg Queen, she would also refer to herself as Annika and not I have. So yeah. I thought that could have been. That's one of the things I wanted to ask everyone what they thought. Was that the basically the collective rejecting her, or was she strong enough to pull herself out?
I feel like when they speak of themselves in the third person, it's more of the collective and less of the individual. That's how I've always taken the Borg and being part of the collective. So to me, it was them saying, no, we don't want her to join us completely yet.
Okay, I think they did a good job of, her deliberating about plugging in, but I was still surprised that she did it at all. Frank, Nikki, were either of you surprised that
I was
Seven
surprised. Actually, yeah, I was super surprised, but also super excited. Like, I was like, are we about to have some Borg mess go down? I had not thought, and I made sure not to watch the preview from last week, so I didn't know what was going to happen in this episode. So I was like, oh yes, Borg. And then I thought, this is now going to be, the show's going to get exciting, and it's going to be, and then they all got...
They all got ejected into space.
And far be it from me to feel bad for a Borg. But...
Yeah, but...
You make us feel for them and think of them as people again. And
the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and the enemy in this case is a show that's not as exciting as we want it to be. So had the Borg all stayed there, and the Borg actually just overwhelmed all the Romulans before they took off, they warped off to the planet, that would have been amazing, and also just an immensely expensive sequence. So I guess it was cheaper to just kind of flick everybody off like fleas and be like, all right, but. Not all the Borg were gone, because some of the XBs were there, and just real unfortunate time for Narissa there to have her gun clog, basically.
Now, I'm going to say something that might be a controversial statement.
I can't wait. Rachel Goodman, known for her hot takes.
You know me. I'm going to piss off the entire world.
That's usually what happens.
Wait for it.
Be careful.
Narissa, by the end of this episode, I started... Yeah, exactly. We needed that.
Frank was like crinkling paper.
That's right.
By the end of this episode, I actually started to understand her better, and I did not think that she was bad any longer. The reason being is... The way that we saw Agnes, we don't know what Narissa was like before she got the warning and saw the visions.
I'm going to bet that one thing she wasn't was cuddly. Go on.
No, I'm sure she wasn't the best person ever, and I'm sure that she did have her... I'm sure that she was...
I'm sure she always had a creepy relationship with her brother.
I'm sure she was a psychopath before that happened. Because, the fact that she could still stand after seeing all that, she was crazy already.
But I do kind of understand her more, and I'm wondering if she's as evil as she is now because of what she saw. And so I'm going to give her... My mind is now open to kind of seeing where this goes with her, and I'm going to, maybe be optimistic. And
that's a very generous thing.
That's very kind of you.
But
Nikki, do you agree with me that you've never been happier to see someone descended upon by a group of former Borg?
I was hoping for body parts. I was like, could we get an arm or an eyeball?
Still plenty of time for.
No, I think she beamed out.
No, I don't. Oh, you
did? Didn't you see that? There was a bright light. I felt she beamed out, and so
that's bad storytelling.
For me,
I give this episode an F based on that alone. I wanted to see her with Borg parts next week.
My thought was it was a weird. I don't know if it was a writer's choice or an actor's choice, but to play her so evil and demented from the beginning. makes it really difficult for me to offer her this generous compassion that you have for her, Rachel.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, she's just a psychopath. Like she's like you have like to be able the way she interacts with her brother, the way that she like the pleasure she seems to take in hurting people. No, that's not from the Vision. She's just crazy. And I think as an actor, how do you I don't think you can come back from the way that she's been portrayed. I don't think you can walk that back to a nicer person.
Now, I will say this, though. The actress who plays her, I've followed her career for a while. She has been on Flash, where she played a villain. Then she went to the CW show Frequency, and she actually played a good guy. And so I've seen her go back and forth. I've seen her go back and forth. And to me, watching her play this role, it's like watching her go to a whole other level.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I'm like, okay, I actually appreciate how she's able to do this and play such a psychopath, considering the role she played on Frequency was very like, she's a good person, she's tough, but very good and genuine.
Okay.
So this is just, and she goes back and forth. Because
that line of thinking is exactly why they sequester juries, because you are bringing information that you should not bring. Is not relevant to this series. She is a very unlikable character, and you're soft towards her because you like her on other shows. Frank, Narissa?
She's been creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see if any of her actions are...
I'd like to see her get sucked out the airlock. See how she likes it.
That's true.
Hey, yeah, still time.
I mean, I guess the whole storyline of this whole 200,000 years ago, synthetic life forms, when they crossed the line.
It's a long time, by the way, 200,000. I did find that, like, does that really add up?
I don't know. I feel like I've seen that story too many times where it's, artificial life forms have risen up and are now trying to...
The rise of the machines, perhaps?
Yeah. And that's not to say that this iteration of it is going to be different. I feel like I want to side with Picard and feel like we've got hope and optimism here on this, so that it would be different this time around. But stories based out of this, I'm like, it's always got to be the machines are trying to destroy humanity. Can't we do something a little different?
To be fair, if we give them a chance, the machines will destroy us.
I mean, I welcome our robot overlords.
Okay, yeah. As do I. Yeah.
My favorite moments this episode, though, had to do with Rios and hearing more about his backstory. I thought they handled that especially well, and I was very interested, especially when we learned that this is a guy named Vandermeer and the situation behind that and how he ended up killing himself, and just hearing what Rios went through to me was very, very it made me actually appreciate his character more. And also, as someone who is an original series fan, what I loved about it is that this broken element of how he was split, even though it's not like The Enemy Within, but it had elements that were similar. Like, for anyone who's not familiar, who didn't watch the original series, The Enemy Within was Kirk beaming up, and when he beams up, there was something done that basically split him into a good version of Kirk and a bad version of Kirk. And so to me, even though Rios was not good versus bad, they kind of separated him into multiple personalities, and I thought, okay, this feels very Star Trek-y, and I'm here for it because felt like TOS nostalgia to me.
I'm of two minds of that, or I feel like what you were saying, Nikki, it's like information that would have been nice sooner, because it feels like interesting what they did with Rios, but then it just so happens to be we find out this information because he just happens to be the one person that happens to know Soji from her previous iteration, and we get all that. It's just the convenience of it.
It's very convenient.
True.
Let's talk about how, for really the first time in the whole series, Starfleet is portrayed as, at least so far, something of a hero, and that does bring us to a moment that, Nikki, you had a very strong reaction to. Let's talk about JL and Admiral Clancy.
How? How do you come out your mouth at Jean-Luc the Picard and tell him to shut the F up? My mouth dropped. I don't know. I don't even know, Ryan, if you can get it, but I sent a picture to the team of what my reaction was, because how dare? Just the I am just outraged. Outraged.
Jean-Luc seemed to sit for it,
He was too shocked.
Now, is it just that it's against Picard, or the fact that we're seeing an F-bomb thrown in a Star Trek series?
The F-bomb in the series is cringy.
This is not our first.
It's not our first, but
No.
it's cringy. And so, like, I knew it was, it was like the precedent had already been set that they can talk that way now.
Yeah.
But the Jean-Luc Picard.
See, my thing is...
And she's lucky that his number one, be it dog or human, wasn't there at the moment.
Either one of them would have been her.
Yes, she would have been hurt.
100% agree.
Yeah.
What were we going to say, Rachel?
My thing is, okay, what throws me the most, and I didn't like that moment either. Like, nobody should be talking to him that way, ever.
Right.
But then number two, my thing is that it's jarring for me. Like, I'm all for cursing. Like, don't get me wrong, I love cursing, but in a Star Trek show, it just does not fit to me. It's jarring.
If you do it right, it's fine in any story. I mean, obviously, the swearing in Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home is hysterical because it's Spock trying to figure out how to use colloquialisms.
Yeah,
and
true.
so it doesn't matter what he says in that context. And look, it can be used, but we were talking before the show. They started using it on Discovery, and I'm like, at no time that they used it on that show did I feel like, yeah, that warranted that fit. Yeah. It always stands out, and I don't know, it's fine if you use it, but it's just like, it's almost like they're like, oh, we got to find a place to put one in this episode. Sure, let's try and have Clancy be the potty mouth.
And see, the moment with Spock is different too, because he was in a society he didn't understand, and he was using their language, and it was a play on the modern world.
The 80s were a very scary time.
Exactly.
None of us knew how to react. So I really felt for Spock there.
There was a dude with a mohawk. I get it. He doesn't understand. But with this is just people in every day, like on the ship, just cursing and throwing out F-bombs. It's like, okay, this doesn't feel.
But if they were doing that, like if that was going to be, if that's the new world we're in, then great. But like just a there were two in this episode, and it was
and one at Picard. No,
right? It was just a lot.
So Starfleet's on the way, Frank. That's going to go well, right? There's no reason that there'll be any problems associated with that in the next two episodes.
I'm sure it won't, but it does guarantee that we'll get some really nice high production value space battles.
Do you think? What's the percentage chance you think that we would see? I don't know what it would be at this point. The Enterprise G or H.
Oh, of course, you've got to see that.
I mean, if we don't by the end of the season, well, I know some people want to see Data. I'd like both. All right, I'd like to see an Enterprise, and I want Data.
I'm sure they'll be hailed by the captain of the Enterprise, and that'll be a moment.
We won't even see the ship.
Yeah.
Or you might see the ship, but then they're hailed by the captain.
Give us the ship.
Of course they will.
All right, everybody's in agreement. I wanted to make sure we got to that because we've got two episodes left, and let us know in the chat. Do you think we're going to see the Enterprise? And also, what letter are we up to? I mean, the last one we saw, the one in Nemesis. No, that was the E, and they crashed the E, so we never actually saw the F, right?
No.
All right. That's 15 years, though, so they got to be on, like, H. Yep.
So
that's true. The way they keep crashing them, you're right. They should be on Z.
They should be, really.
Would they call it Z? Anyway, what were you going to say?
Freddie P. in the chat said universal translators used to filter F-bombs out. So I thought that was an interesting
wow, I mean,
thing,
the show used to be on broadcast television, let's be honest, as to really why that happened. But I do like that. I do like that as an idea, because the universal translator is like, oh, no.
I feel like the big question, though, will be, will Picard set foot on the Enterprise?
No.
I don't think so.
Because he'll steal it.
Yeah.
He will.
He's not gonna be able to stop
I
himself.
think he will be on the Enterprise. We will get to see him in the... Like, we're going to get to see him. He's
going to try and sit in that chair.
Can I tell you? Sorry. That was one of my favorite moments when he was sitting in the chair and he goes, I don't know how to use it.
I thought that was great. I did like that moment. So let's kind of go through everything that happened on the ship. So we've referenced the fact that there had previously been a version of Soji. Was it Gianni? Jana. Yeah, because I had it. I'm like, wait, you said it differently, and I don't know. I just had to guess, and my spelling is not strong. So we have a lot of detective work on Raffi's part about the Conclave of Eight and sort of figuring out this reference for where they should go, and I again found this is just like you were saying before, Frank, just shockingly convenient storytelling. And I was just like, okay, so just the fact that you're seeing this image, and I don't know, I think this is probably my bias against Raffi, that when
She got sober just in time
Yeah.
to become Sherlock Holmes, and
well, a lot of times Sherlock Holmes needed to sober up to become Sherlock
that
Holmes.
is
So that
also
part,
true.
that part's
That is
all
also
right.
true. But I thought it was way too convenient.
Yeah.
And yeah, and of all the people to make those connections, she'd been strung out the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
She was only sober for like 5 minutes in the beginning. So no.
And I get that the whole Agnes situation kind of propelled her into a place where, okay, she might get closer to Rios, but I still felt like it happened too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That they would go from really not liking each other to now she's trying to talk to him and like get information and figure out like what. Like I get she's trying to get answers, but it just their ability to talk to each other just seemed to happen too quickly.
Mm.
Well, we also she does. I will give Raffi that she was right about Agnes. She makes sure that everybody knows she was right, and like, yeah, you were definitely right. I do find it interesting, sort of the way that everybody seems to move on from her being a murderer. Was it from Agnes? Because everybody's just like, well, I guess leaving her alone with Soji is because, Soji even says it. She's like, don't worry, I'm not going to try to kill you. And she's like, yeah, I wouldn't let you do that. You can't kill me. I mean, look at you.
I don't think they let her off the hook. I think that the way that they're reacting to her, even though they weren't exact, I mean, you could see it in Picard's face that there was something that there was just him backing off, putting up a wall. But at the same time, he used to be a captain. Like, he knows that you have to treat people a certain way. And in this specific case, she, it isn't like she is like Narissa. She was a good person. We saw that. But seeing these images, she couldn't handle it. And so I don't think Picard is excusing her, but I also think that he's placing this as a special category. Plus, she did say she was going to turn herself in when they landed. And I think that I do feel like they are pulling back from her, though. So I don't think they're letting her off the hook at all. And I especially loved that she is not letting herself off the hook when she brought up this idea of her wanting to kill herself every day because of what happened. To me, I was like, okay, I love this is probably one of my favorite parts of the episode, because to me, it was almost metaphorical for people who, even if they don't make a mistake like this, if they make a different mistake that isn't killing someone, but it's a mistake that whatever it is, you have to live with your regrets and live with yourself, live with the worst part of yourself after you've done some bad things. And to me, that was relatable in and of itself, just because who hasn't done something that they're not proud of.
We also delved into Captain Rios's backstory. We were, I think, from the time we met him, we knew that he had been involved in Starfleet, and I just sort of was wondering, Frank, your thoughts about, basically about the way that that story was relayed to us.
I mean, I guess we get the answer for why all the holograms are some semblance of him. I feel like, okay, I mean, again, it's just the pacing of the show. This felt like still way too long into the series. And then it just happens to tie up conveniently with what exactly we need in this episode. Yeah. But one thing I did like that Raffi, when she does want to go rub Rios' face in it about Agnes, sits her on the bridge and talks to the navigation hologram. For the longest time, I'm like, how do you not realize that this is not
And
Rios?
they know each other.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no.
What are you doing?
Like, this one doesn't even sound like him.
No.
And a completely different hair. What are you talking?
Yeah. I find the holograms annoying. I know that there's been lots of Goofy in Star Trek world, history, universe, but they're goofy and cheesy in a way. Like, I don't like them. And I feel like I feel like they're, I don't even know what they're like a gimmicky kind of, I don't know.
I also find them to be inconsistent, because the one of them, the emergency medical hologram, was like, oh yeah, and there was that other day where I saw her killing some dude.
Right.
And I was like, well,
You could have said that
why
earlier.
don't you bring that up at any point before this? So I was very disappointed in that emergency medical hologram.
I mean, and I guess I could only think is that the EMH can activate itself, unlike the Doctor, but the EMH can only talk interact with people if it's been summoned.
The Doctor on Voyager was, I don't know, did they adjust his settings?
No, they did adjust his settings to make him,
initially it was, and I think initially each time he went away, he forgot. Like, it was like, so I think that he obviously became a much more evolved program. And look, the tech that's used for these different versions of him, it's interesting, but I agree, they are annoying. I like the real Rios, the captain one, and then the hologram ones aren't for me.
Patrick Dunnett says the engineer hologram had the Scottish accent. It was too on the nose. Come on.
It was very too
We
on the
didn't
nose.
need that.
Yeah.
The stylistic touch, though, of when they do a search and their eyes kind of glow white for a second. I was like, all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And Frank and everyone, but what did we think about getting the shout out when Picard and Rios were talking? They mentioned a Federation captain.
Yes.
I'm gonna get her name wrong, aren't I? Marta, obviously, but
Yes.
Benedides?
I think that's how you pronounce it.
Benedides, who was, of course, from the episode Tapestry, where Q gives Picard the chance to relive his youth, as if he didn't get stabbed in the heart and all of that. And that's where he's like Ensign Picard, and he will never rise to the ranks of command. What were you going to say, Rachel?
No, just that for anyone not familiar, they had feelings for each other, and so I loved the callback to her, and I loved that connection.
They do a lot of Tapestry callbacks. They don't do a lot of Interlight callbacks.
No.
Because they got the heart.
We don't talk about Interlight.
Yes.
Yeah, Interlight.
No.
Yeah.
We haven't. I wanted to. Eduardo Cruz in the chat said, "What happened to Space Legolas? Are we going to talk about?"
Oh, Eleanor.
Yeah.
Well, I did like that
Eleanor,
he gave Seven a big hug, and she was like, "What? Like, I'm not that human. Let go."
Yeah, like what's his deal now? Like is he just stuck with Seven of Nine?
Well,
Are they gonna hang out?
No, I feel like they're going to end up at the planet as well.
Yeah, I think that's how we get him back, is that that Picard's got a Borg cube that's going to help him out, which as reinforcements go, that's not a bad one.
That's true.
I can't stop seeing him as Spock.
Yeah, he
really hard.
definitely gives off a super.
There are too many people in this show who have Spocky vibes, where you're like, what is that? No.
Well, yeah, because Narek looks like Ethan Peck from Discovery.
Yeah.
Very specifically looks like that Spock. Like, if they would just let him shave, I don't think he would have looked like that Spock. But no, let's just confuse everybody.
I also felt like, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm trying to think, in the world of the Federation at this time, in Starfleet Federation, just people living in that day to day, when Agnes describes to Picard what Commander O did for her, it's like, she's put her hands to my face. Like, why not? Doesn't everybody know mind meld?
Right. Right.
Yeah, you do think that at least amongst this group of people, that's a phrase that you're not going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, a what melt? Is that like a tuna melt? I don't even know. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it's almost like how do you not know what it is? You know, I mean, when she's like, I don't know, she did this thing. She'd never heard of that.
She knows like obscure trivia from the Romulan Empire, but she'd never heard of a mind meld before.
Yeah, that's problematic.
Is there a story supervisor on this show? Because I'm starting to think that perhaps there's not, or maybe they alternate episodes. Anyway, so we have a I don't know. I feel like we're heading towards an epic showdown. And oh my goodness, I'm really hoping for some excitement these last two episodes, because if it doesn't deliver, I'm just like, what have we been doing for the last 10 weeks? So before we get to our engaging moment, it's not even really a prediction. This is more of your hopes for what this two-part finale is going to be like. Setting the stage, as we saw at the end of the episode. They're like, look at all this. Come on, come back next week. It's going to be awesome. Maybe we'll have some F-bombs. We don't know. How excited are you, Rachel, for the finale of this season?
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we'll get data in some capacity, even if it's not the data that we know.
Sure.
I'm hopeful for some more Enterprise references and maybe an appearance. And I'm hopeful that this will, I think I just want to feel more of Soji's connection to the past. And that would make me satisfied with where this is going.
Frank?
If there was, whether it's real data or some hologram memory of data, the chance for them, Soji
emergency
and data,
medical data?
there you go, to interact would be a nice touching moment.
I definitely agree.
And then just seeing Picard actually on the Enterprise would be cool just for a moment.
Just sitting right in that chair. What do you think, Nikki?
I'm gonna just ditto what they just said. I mean, I don't have anything additional to offer.
What about more about Raffi and her son? Does anybody need that?
No.
Oh, man.
No.
Are you sure?
I've just been waiting every single week.
His wife is expecting. Is it? What? Okay, so I'm not alone in that. All right. So that's not what anyone's looking for.
No.
All right. Before we run out of time, let's get to our engaging moment. Rachel.
When Soji said to Picard that she knew for a fact that Data loved him, I was like that it's up there for me.
Yeah. Nikki's having a problem right now, not just when she watched it.
I was like, oh man.
I agree. That was beautiful. Yeah.
Frank, what did you find to be the engaging moment?
When Picard is talking to Agnes and says, he was your mentor, your lover. What is this? What is this? Holy cow.
Oh God.
Nikki?
For me, it was when when Picard was talking to Rios about the synth, the future that we're looking for, and he says the future is left for us to write, and we have powerful tools, openness, optimism, and a spirit of curiosity. All they have is fear, and fear is the great destroyer. And I was like, that is the Star Trek I know and love.
And part of that exchange is the past is written, but the future is left for us to write, which I have that as an engaging moment, but also what I referenced earlier when Soji told Agnes, like, yeah, you're not going to kill me. You know, just the idea of like, you're so cute. You killed an old man who was half dead and you just pushed him over the edge. But seriously, I'll tear your fingernails off. But before you even blink, I'll tear your fingernails off. But anyway, that's all the time we have for this week. We'll be back next week.
End on the fingernails.
And the week after for the final 2 episodes of season 1 of Picard. But until then, Nikki Bailey, where can people find you?
You can find me on all the social medias at Nikki Bailey _.
Frank Moran, everybody wants to find you. Where can they do it?
Happy Go Jackie on Twitter and Instagram.
Rach Goodman.
You can find me at Rach Goodman on Twitter. Thank you.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And Mondays, you can find myself, Rachel, and Flobito on the Curb Your Enthusiasm after show here on AfterBuzz TV. That's at 3 p.m. Pacific. And you can find Rachel and I Tuesdays over on the Popcorn Talk doing a retro anatomy of a movie. This week, it'll be Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress, despite the fact that Mulan is now not coming out the week we thought it was, but we're still going to do that anyway. Anyway, that's all the time we have for this week. But until next week, live long and prosper.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.